What's a little court-martial offense between friends here on V'ger Please? Vile visit to Bajor. My name is Joseph.
What, you never spit in someone's food so they couldn't keep eating and you guys could leave the restaurant? I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, do you have any across-the-universe playthrough content you want to share? I have one little story, but I didn't know if how many of your late-night sessions you want to share.
It is such an obsessive thing that when I start playing it that I don't think I've played it all over this past week because once I start, I can't stop, and it's been busy at work, so I haven't played.
I've been busy at work for me too, so I haven't gotten a chance to play very much, but I did just kind of progress the story past like call it the first 2 or 3 seasons. You know, the way they structure the sectors is that you kind of deal with like Kazon Seska plot, and then it like transitions from there. And one of my, you eventually get the Tuvix episode at some point.
Sure, yeah.
If you're searching around. Controversial opinion. It's always correct to get rid of Tuvix. There's a funny meme element to keeping Tuvix around, and I would love to play through on a different save file to see like how much the game might change if you have access to them. But it actually makes a huge qualitative difference to not have both Neelix and Tuvok. Like their cross skills work together on away teams too well because they cover so much ground that it's like, no, actually I want them both back.
I have a huge crew complement in the game, and I've posted a couple screenshots.
Yeah, because you got everybody. I missed out on the Kazon guy.
What's the fucking one where there's the Borg probe with space aids? The guy put in there, was it not facets? It's the one where 7 to 9 regression, infinite regression.
Yes.
That one, it was so easy to pick a choice that made 7 of 9 unavailable the rest of the game, despite the fact I did a mind meld to like save her. Like that pissed me off. I reset the sector because of that, because it wasn't clear that you were ultimately going to lose her. My crew is huge. Even still, I want more crew. And playing Across the Unknown has done nothing but give Catherine Janeway a lot of sympathy in my book, as once I had to start sitting there and splitting hairs on resources. And that game, it's feast or famine. You either have way too much of something or you are struggling and just going vast different distances just to get the one thing you need, deuterium or whatever, because I need it to, or duranium to build a thing. I need some specialty room. So yeah, like Tuvix, just the math of like, do I want 2 good crew members or do I want 1 crew member? And I want 2 crew members. I was surprised I was able to get B'Elanna to turn into Klingon B'Elanna and hybrid B'Elanna. Like, yeah,
did you have the Vidian
device? The Vidian medical device is the most OP. I'm surprised that wasn't DLC, honestly. The phage stuff in the beginning, if you did not get the Vidian medical device, then you were playing on hard, because that thing is the answer to like 25% of the dilemmas I come across. But yeah, like once you're really splitting hairs on resources, like A, I understand why she did what she did, and B, I understand why they putz around and explore as much as they do, because the draw of unlocking new technology that's currently hidden in the tech trees is so addictive. And for the Technocratic Federation, like, yeah, I get it big time.
In all of the things that were our complaints in the show, these guys are clear fans, right? Like if you dick around too much in a sector, your crew starts to rebel, so you have to keep moving on.
Yep.
Like you said, like Janeway's decision trees start to make a lot more sense in terms of the urgency. You constantly recruit people from the Delta Quadrant to join your crew.
Which she did not. But I'll investigate every little space whoopsie do I can, because who knows if there's an adventure to be had in there.
It is a fantastic gaming experience. And it is helped so much by its relatively simplistic presentation. It's very accessible in its own way, and can't recommend it enough. So I look forward to our continued adventures in the Delta Quadrant. However, we have, of course, some more near and dear to our present circumstances reviews to do. Sir, what episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine did we watch this week?
Season 4, Episode 4, first aired October 16th, 1995. Hippocratic Oath. Teleplay by Lisa Klink, or as we called her back in the Voyager days, Lisa Kink, although that's kind of off the table here. Story created by Nicholas Correa and Lisa Klink, directed by Odo, Renee Abenjeros.
I'm gonna say that this is definitely Lisa Klink's best script. I would go as far as to say it's extraordinarily well written. I was so stunned by the weird watch of really like trying to understand how someone who kind of created some very mid Voyager content came through in her first effort was something that was so strong. And apparently, this is the first script she wrote after an internship that she was working through in the Berman production team. And would you be shocked to hear that Ron Moore took an uncredited pass at it to improve it significantly?
Doesn't make up for her killing Lon Suitor and Seska.
No, it does not. Does that make up for killing Lon Suitor? Nor does it make up for just all of Blood Fever. But this is one of those kind of foundational block DS9 episodes that's never going to stand out on anyone's top 10 list, but is just really solid overall. It's well written. It is very well directed, albeit with a couple spots where I'm going to make fun of Renee Abenjeros' shot selection because he created a discontinuity within a single scene. Probably because he couldn't reshoot anything because of some of the production weirdness that came into play, because this was actually shot before The Visitor, and things kind of got rearranged as a consequence, so he probably couldn't go back to redo some things. And then, of course, the acting. It's a big standout episode of Bashir and O'Brien, and it takes their relationship in a direction that makes a lot of sense given they're both in Starfleet, and there's a vast social distance between the two of them. Not just in one's an educated doctor and one's a handyman, but also one's an officer and one isn't. And that's really comes into play here for the very first time, which is weird to say since we're 4 seasons in now, but they make a real point of it. And I think it works really well.
Not to mention a banger B plot too, which is a whole conversation we already had during Worf's arrival of how he's going to integrate into Deep Space Nine and some bridges that they were going to have to cross. And I'm happy to see them crossing them so quickly and realistically.
Yeah. It's like a very necessary B plot to try and like answer for kind of the question that everyone would have about Worf joining the show, which is, wow, this is a much different place than Enterprise. How is he going to deal with it? Well, maybe not great. Maybe it's a learning experience for him. So we open actually on the B plot where Worf is hanging out in Quarks, and he's like doing Detective Worf, which is what we said we didn't want, in scoping out a potential smuggler who is apparently dealing in, I don't know, smuggler crystals. They never really explain what it is this thing is, why it's so illegal in Federation space, but he's got his pad and he's just kind of glaring at him from across the bar. He's like physically repelled by Quark's presence, which is a bit of a theme for his B plot. And
Quark versus Worf is a great pairing too, because Worf really is a fish out of water and completely unprepared for the dynamic of Deep Space Nine. This is a guy that just came from the flagship of the Federation, where everybody is Starfleet or a family member of Starfleet or a Federation scientist who was good enough to get onto the flagship for Galaxy class science work. And I'm not saying Galaxy class as a ship class. I'm saying like working around the entire galaxy. You're not a world class talent. You're not a solar system class talent. You are a quadrant class talent if you're ending up on the Enterprise. So Everybody's there, wants to be there, and has earned a place to be there. And it's presumable they're all going to be playing by the rules. You didn't see Worf breaking up bar fights. You didn't see Worf dealing with black market shenanigans, gambling, or gray market, whatever. Berman era TNG and Gene Roddenberry era TNG Enterprise D was a pristine, perfect post-scarcity utopia to the point where humanity is alien in its presentation to us.
Yes,
absolutely. Then you go to Deep Space Nine, which is a truck stop that used to be out in the sticks and has now become basically, for all intents and purposes, a drug corridor. You have massive opportunity, illegal opportunity, and all sorts of stuff. And you have a Galaxy class criminal, Quark, who is operating there in this ridiculous situation where it could be a red alert, end of the world attack at any point. And this guy's choosing to stay in business because there's that much profit opportunity on the table. Worf has never had to deal with someone as slippery as Quark before, and Quark runs circles around him.
Yes, he does. And Odo, too. Odo is just as slippery. And, you know, Renee probably did not put himself much in this episode due to his directorial duties here. But it's the perfect use of him to demonstrate why it is Worf would not be someone who would thrive as the security chief of this station. And finally, maybe really establishing why Odo has continued to retain the job, even though I think early on we questioned why it is that would occur. Now, as they've kind of established things more deeply on the show, Odo's niche that he has carved out and the unique circumstances the station is in starts to make really sense. Like, actually, you really are the man for the job, because you are the master to no one except very specific, almost autistic devotion to the idea of justice as you perceive it, which is what's almost necessary to function on this line.
I'd say that all changed after the die has been cast. And again, I think that Odo is now a company man, that his vigilante style pursuit of justice as he sees fit has subsided, and that there is a loyalty to
partially, certainly, but he's still always going to be, I think, suspicious of the Federation.
Sure, but he is loyal to Cisco, and Cisco is Starfleet.
True.
But after that loyalty to Cisco's absolute rule, I think you're still going to see a lot of classic Odo there. And Odo also is a flawed character for many reasons, and one of which is poor communication, because the whole B-plot here is that Worf sees Quark up to nonsense. He sees the sky. He sees a potential smuggling thing, and Worf's instinct is to nip this thing in the butt immediately, because he's not taking any greater considerations into evaluation for this, whereas because he's used to Starship, where they were a self-contained ecosystem. Now, a stationary space station, this is just a waypoint to bigger and crazier things, bigger Bajoran problems. And Odo, as Constable, has bigger problems than just Deep Space Nine. He's looking out at the big picture. He understands that these are small fish that can lead up to bigger fish. At any point, Odo could have been like, listen, man, I understand all that, but I'm going after the supplier to this guy. So I'm going to do a sting, and, here's my game plan. And Worf would be like, oh, damn, that's great tactics. But flawed Odo is a insolent child.
He's priggish. He's defensive of his what he believes is his thing to do. This is definitely a character trait that we've seen him express on multiple occasions,
especially towards Starfleet security.
Yes, and he doesn't work well with Starfleet security, absolutely, which, of course, Worf is the alpha and the omega of. And he also, like, again, you're kind of touching on it already, Worf doesn't understand the value of a criminal informant, right? Like, which is what Quark is. And that's, like, actually where the B-plot ends up establishing quite firmly at the end. And I think I really like that conversation that Worf has with Cisco, which is, yeah, Quark is a criminal, but he's our criminal, and you have no idea how useful that is.
Yep.
He's the guy who can help us set shit up that we would otherwise not be able to do. And that's the kind of thing you need to learn how to grasp. But
that came in clutch with Dominion stuff. This isn't just a small time illegal gem trafficking. Like, the Dominion threat is on the horizon, and I need as many opportunities and avenues as possible. And Quark represents a lot of those.
Now let's get to the A plot. We'll revisit the B plot, I think, a little bit more later on, but primary action is actually on a runabout. We haven't seen one of those in a while.
No.
Didn't take the Defiant out to do science today. We had to take a Winnebago. And it's Bashir and O'Brien. I love the teaser conversation they're having about Keiko not liking that O'Brien has become something of a bachelor in the absence of her while she works on Bajor. And, they're having a very, like, dude friends conversation about it. O'Brien accidentally basically says that he wishes his wife was more like a man. Bashir makes fun of him for it. It's very authentic. 90s. I get it.
Sure.
And eventually, though, we have to have the plot happen, so they get a a magneton pulse reading, which O'Brien knows is the consequence of a damaged warp core, could be a ship in
before we
trouble.
jump along, I do think that the argument that, Kiko is written off the show effectively, but she's still there in the background. Miles O'Brien is there full-time on the station. He is rearranging the quarters, which seems fair. He's putting a workshop in the bedroom. She came home and told him, no, you're not redecorating. I feel like you redecorating is you trying to be a bachelor and write me out of your life. And he's like, no, that's not it. I like... Yeah, Bashir tries to like make the scenes like you doing things in the bedroom, which is
it's a very Freudian, yeah.
But it's like the reality is like, listen, I could be at Quark's picking up chicks. I am in our quarters doing work. That's the argument to make there, and
sure,
they don't make it. But like, yeah, like this dude's just alone. He is married and he is shackled and he's keeping himself busy, and the way he's keeping himself busy is still getting him in trouble.
Marriage.
Yeah.
So they get the reading. However, when it is that they arrive at the planet in question, they get hit by some sort of plasma field, which evidently is a Jem'Hadar weaponry of some kind. And they are forced to crash land, albeit in a very controlled fashion.
Best crash landing I've ever seen. 10 out of 10. Good job, Chief.
Yeah, definitely well done on his part.
Where not only is he set down in one piece, but they're actually able to just take off, no big deal. And with no repairs.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand how it is that there was like no lasting damage, but then again, I guess I never had a chance really to assess their circumstances because they get captured right away. So it was just really a matter of them getting back. Also, they got out to investigate like what it is happened, and then they just got. So
they're there on a humanitarian mission. The concern there is that there's a downed ship that needs help. They went there to help the people. They crash landed. They got out to go help people, and then they get ambushed by Cloaking Field, Predator, Jem'Hadar.
First time we've seen like a lot of Jem'Hadar action on the show since the kid, really. Like from terms of characterization. We've met them, but this is the first time we see them talk and interact on an extensive basis with main characters.
Very humanizing. Also, again, Lisa Klink. I don't know about Nicholas Cora, but a lot of technical manual nerd talk.
Yes.
Gold division. You're a specialist or security. Your rank is chief petty officer. Blue jumpsuit. Your science or medical.
It's a Danube class runabout
with extensive, with phaser modifications or whatever. Like that's a level of technical grit and Starfleet detail nerd shit that again didn't happen on TNG, and it's interesting to see that coming out here. Although maybe that's some Ron Moore action there.
I think it was because there's a very specific costume change that occurred in this episode that's very important. This is now finally when Chief O'Brien has an enlisted man pin on his neck.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a senior chief petty officer pin that they made specifically to finally smooth out the idea of a non-commissioned officer, which the episode is really about, right? Like trying to finally square the circle around commissioned officer versus non-commissioned officer hierarchy. Because, truth be told, O'Brien has been showing up in TNG and they never really figured out what he was until deep into his run, right? They called him transporter chief without like knowing, like, is he an officer or is he like literally a chief petty officer? It didn't matter, right? Because
he started off in a burgundy jumpsuit sitting at con or ops or something.
At con, yeah. And he had like lieutenant pins at one point. Like they didn't know what he was for a while. And then when they did, they didn't really explore it.
And it's funny too. They tie this in also with Worf because Sisko's like, how long you work security? And he's like 7 years. And it's like, well, what do you do before security? And thinking back to season 1 of Next Gen, Worf was in Burgundy, wasn't he?
He was.
Like, what the fuck was he exactly? Because he was always been like a subordinate to Tasha Yar, but he wasn't wearing gold. And, this is just sci-fi 80s offhand decision costuming shit here, right? And it's the same
probably
thing.
Put him in Burgundy because it looked better.
Same thing with O'Brien. So this episode really calling attention to the service record of these people and trying to like clean up the canon is cool. And
It
that
is.
does feel very Ron Moore to me.
So they establish the hierarchy between the two. He's a lieutenant. He's a senior chief petty officer. He's, they suss that out without even having a conversation with him. And the Jem'Hadar definitely immediately present themselves the way we have been used to them, which is they're just going to execute them. And they're very business, and there's no real conversation to be had. But after Bashir mentions he's a doctor, they get more interested in keeping them. And our lead Jem'Hadar, Goran Agar, we've seen him before in terms of the actor. Scott McDonald is the guy who plays him. He was Tosk, the guy that
Nice, yeah. All right.
O'Brien helped jailbreak. He also
Most
played
dangerous game.
He more famously for you and me, he was Dolam, who was the head reptilian Zindi. He was the bad guy, basically, of season 3 of Enterprise.
They love putting this guy in scale makeup.
Yes, that is what he does. He does scale makeup. I don't think he's got another role that we're going to run into in terms of our continuity. This is our last
Lizard Man, Lizard Man, and Lizard Man.
And he showed up, I think, in TNG as a Romulan. He showed up without his makeup, I think, in Caretaker and Voyager as a background character as well. He's definitely he does really good with the makeup on. You can tell why they gave him a recurring role in Enterprise, because he just acts through that stuff in that sort of way, like Armin Shimmerman does too, where he can give you the emotion despite having layers and layers of shit on his face.
Yep.
And it's really important for his character in this episode because he's really the main character. And he has to carry this idea of a Jem'Hadar, as we will find out, that has led a group of other Jem'Hadar who are interested in escaping the Dominion. And through that, we get a ton of content that's really relevant to the organization of the Dominion, the place of the Jem'Hadar, what the Vorta are. And then finally, we get named that a narcotic they're addicted to, Ketracel White.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts the question into the audience's mind of, we've only seen them portrayed as like remorseless killers at this point. And of course, Bashir is getting this vision of they are sentient beings that could possibly be more.
And all of this starkly contrasts the child, which the entire point of that episode is that you cannot save these people. They are single purpose. They are bred for murder. They are bred to obey, and they will not be your friend no matter how many hands of brotherhood are extended to them. So high conflict in this episode for many reasons.
It's a very delicate line to take, where you have two of your characters who are supposed to be sympathetic, main characters of your television program, who are Starfleet, and therefore you would expect hold to Starfleet ideals as it relates to the humanitarian mission of the organization, and have one of them very much believing, I'm going to intercede and intervene to try and help these people achieve their goal, because that could assist them in living a more free life from the yoke of having to be killers. And the other, still very understandable perspective of, you're insane. These are creatures who will do anything to destroy us. And if we help them, we could be helping the whole of the Jem'Hadar in a way that could destroy Starfleet and the Federation. And we cannot do that. And it's the seed of so much of the conflict that ends up coming up over and over and over again in the show from this point forward, which is what really struck me on the rewatch, right? Like,
but then there's also this argument C, which Bashir never presents, and it makes the episode kind of difficult for me. And that is, the Jem'Hadar are the backbone of the Dominion, and that is because they are the attack dogs of the founders. And then these other guys that get called out a couple times, the Vorta, whatever they are, which
they're the Elfier guys,
Wayun, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Same deal as Borg. If we can disrupt the collective and we can destroy the order, it will plunge this lockstep organization into chaos, and that is a tactical advantage for the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah.
So not only is this the humanitarian thing to do to give these people a chance to be individuals instead of drug-addled murder bots, But hey, if we can fucking throw a monkey wrench in the chains of oppression that the founders are using to keep the Dominion in order, then like, wow, what an opportunity.
And it makes sense that Bashir wouldn't think of it that way, nor O'Brien. Like, that's a great argument, and it is something that someone like Cisco could have come up with, or Nechayev could have come up with. But Bashir's a doctor. Bashir's scope of what his life is, what his mission is very much tied to his profession. Same with O'Brien. His profession, as this episode emphasizes, has largely been soldier, has been assessing tactical threat and eliminating it. Survival. So their views are limited to the scope of their expertise. So you have Bashir making the humanitarian argument and O'Brien making the more base level, but still very relevant survival based argument.
Yeah, but listen, here's the wall we're butting up against. And it's a TV show, and we're, it's kind of a morality story. But Julian Bashir is much smarter than I am and much smarter than you are. And here we are after 45 minutes of watching the television show, very early in, and I'm like, what about this advantage? This is a smart guy. He should have been able to come up to this, especially after spending 4 or 5 days working on this thing. They could have thrown in one line of dialogue like, hey, there's a tactical advantage. There's no guarantee that, that would work or whatever. But, the facts on the table are humanitarian issue and our survival. And you could have wrote that third out.
I would agree.
The B plot's a banger. And I don't fault them for not putting more dialogue into the A plot, because the B plot needs to be there.
I would say, though, in defense of the idea of Bashir, despite his intelligence and genetic engineering not arriving at that conclusion, the smartest people in the world can miss the simplest things. And especially if you were tunnel visioned into thinking, I can solve for this potentially unsolvable biological question, which is what he is focused on.
But they don't even get into that until day 2. Because the first 2 days, it seems like they're fucking around trying to plan an escape.
Right. At first, they're united of, we got to get the fuck out of here. And we shouldn't help them. Bashir is a little bit more able to be convinced because he's the only one having one-on-one time with Goran Agar, and is seeing like he's personally different. It's that teaser they did of him like doing a bit of psychology with O'Brien.
Yeah,
it kind of feeds into like he's getting the read that he's actually changing on a personality level, not just on a physical level. He's being merciful. He is being thoughtful towards his, not just his people, but also like Bashir and O'Brien specifically. His not being addicted to the white and having the ability to think for himself has asserted a sort of base level morality that he is seeing, and O'Brien is not. And that's what's influencing ultimately his thought process as it relates to we should help. And O'Brien not seeing any of that and reaching the conclusions that he does makes a ton of sense. The way they build it up, like first they try to escape. O'Brien makes his attempt at escaping that gets interrupted basically by his little lightning bolt machine getting found by the guard before he can use it. And the guy getting hit in the knee and then not being euthanized. Yeah. Like O'Brien's gone by that point. And so only Bashir is seeing that. And when he relates it later back to O'Brien when they're in the cell, O'Brien's just like, it's a trick. They're just trying to trick you. And that is very much like what we hear about like his experiences with the Cardassians and the way they would do things and the way they would use psychology against their opponents. And his experiences are colored by that.
He's PTSD'd. It's funny too, because this Goran Agar, Scott McDonald, the last time we saw him was when he was the
Tosk. Yeah.
Tosk. And it was O'Brien who was like, this is a person who is trying to evade their destiny and become more than what they should be, and I'm going to commit to helping this person fight the natural order of things.
And the fact that Tosk was clearly prey, and these are predators, kind of makes sense that O'Brien is blind to his own hypocrisy in deciding to take the actions he does.
Sure.
And again, it's a great enlisted officer versus enlisted non-com versus prestige officer conflict, in that it's the officer who's the one who's kind of seeing a bigger picture than the non-com. And I love that Bashir orders O'Brien to help him. But O'Brien is yelling at him at one point, like in the cell, when the conflict starts to reach, like he's really like Bashir really wants to help these people try and solve for this problem. He's yelling at him. He's like, no, we're not doing that. Like O'Brien is lecturing Julian over like what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And Bashir has to actually assert his authority to say, I'm in charge here. I'm the senior officer. You actually have to do what I say. And O'Brien's very upset by this and spits out, yes, sir, like he's been insulted.
Well, I mean, they've had a very complicated relationship. When things started, O'Brien was very mindful of rank and division between the two. And Julian was very quick to melt those walls. Please call me Julian, this and that. Julian is absolutely the one who initiated the relationship between these two, and it is very warm. They see each other as equals, clearly. And O'Brien is very aware of Julian's lack of experience. Yes. And O'Brien has been through some real shit. Like when the trap is sprung and O'Brien is able to escape finally, he has to go back and pull the part off the runabout, and he engineers the transporter evacuation. He goes like right back into MK Ultra, plantation.
He's in Vietnam again.
Yeah, like he is back in it, Rambo style. No beats are missed. This guy is super soldier.
He makes up for the fact he kind of got rolled during Way of the Warrior by taking out some Jem'Hadar all by himself.
He's very lucky Jem'Hadar didn't fuck his arm up, because that arm's waiting for it. But so he's looking at Julian like, listen, son, this is my bread and butter here. We are in a jungle. There are bad guys. They are vaguely Cardassian looking. Like, you trust me. So rank coming back into this is a real system shock. And obviously, the episode is engineered where you're on Julian's side. You see everything Julian sees. You see that there is a real potential for these Jem'Hadar to slip the yoke of aggression and violence that they have been thrust into. Again, against everything we saw in the child. Was it the child? Whatever
the episode where they have the kid. Sure,
great callbacks in this episode to that too, by the way. So O'Brien does look like the worst decision here. Although I will say by the end, there's some good questions as to what would have actually happened to Bashir.
Yeah, O'Brien's decisions are framed as the incorrect ones, but not unreasonable. And like you said, they use the perspective, the fact that the camera stays on Julian most of the episode, and what his conversations look like with Gornagar. And one of those is, and again, this is where I kind of like, Renee probably couldn't get a chance to go and reshoot it, but he's having the conversation with the Jem'Hadar first, and talking about like that he was on this planet, he crashed, and then he was able to survive without the white, and this is why he's come back. And the way that he frames a lot of these shots in the close-ups is really strong, because again, they get Scott McDonald's face and he's able to act through the makeup so well. There's a couple times when Julian is faced out looking into the middle distance, and then suddenly he's faced back having the conversation with him, because they want to have him dramatically come to his shoulder so they can frame that close-in shot. Clear, like, oh, oops, he is turned a different way depending on exactly what shot we're using. I hope no one notices. But it still is very effective, because it's those moments is where you as the audience are brought into the emotion that this guy genuinely has. And that's the big clue that Julian's right, is we're seeing on this guy's face, who we've never met before, that he's really working through a deep emotional conflict that is not something we've seen in a Jem'Hadar before. And it gives Julian's perspective that only he has and that the audience has more weight, which makes what O'Brien does feel like the wrong decision to make. That's a director thing, right? Like, all of that, again, like, I'm shocked how all well this worked together, where whatever Lisa Klink wrote that Ron Moore kind of melded together, and then Renee took it and said, I know how I can convey this with just like how I frame the shots and how I'm going to use my guest actor, who apparently was very much sought out for this specifically. to by Renee to
Hmm.
do this. So it's all
Which
it all
game
comes together
recognized
nicely.
game like, hey man, I see how you acted through this fucking shitty makeup, this rubber
Yeah.
makeup I'm wearing. Like,
And apparently this is Renee Amjar's favorite episode that he directed,
it's a
which
great one.
I can because of I think he kind of got what he wanted out of it. Um Ultimately, like you said, like Bashir gives the orders and then O'Brien is just not going to follow them. He just thinks he knows better in this circumstance, and he's like you said, his relationship with Julian is very warm to the point where I'm just going to disobey you because that's what I think I need to do to save your life. End of story. And it's like him taking ownership of the relationship in a way that he hasn't before. If Bashir initiated it, this is him kind of almost being big brother
Yes.
and saying like,
And also too, look, man, this isn't the first time that O'Brien's gone off reservation. The Tosk episode specifically, he went way off. And normally he's a good soldier. What other times can you think where he's disobeyed orders?
well, the Tosk episode's the one where he does the most disobeying, but he joined the team when they were there in the Circle episodes to play patty cake version of terrorist intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He
he
beamed
certainly
Worf over to go kill Duras,
he did.
probably.
Most
So,
likely, yes.
the worst look for O'Brien in this episode, though, is where he evades capture with the transporter trick. He circles back and he goes, "Come on, Julian, we're going." And Julian's like, "No, we're staying." And he's like, "Fuck that, we're going." He's like, "If you want to leave, you can." And now at this point, both these people have agency. Julian's not saying, "I order you to stand here and stay in captivity," He's saying, "You do what you want, but I have an obligation to people I think I can help in a moral cause." And he could have said, "And also, I think there's a great opportunity for the Federation here if I can develop this technology to free these guys off Ketracel White. I think it's worth the gamble. You go home, you've got a family. I don't. I'm an officer. We know what this shit. We've had this conversation before that officers know what they're signing up for. It's high risk. I'm playing my officer card right now. You can leave if you want, but I'm staying there." And then O'Brien goes, "Okay, fine, I'm leaving." And then he turns the gun and blows up the workstation right as Julian was starting to make progress. And he goes, "Now we both have to go." And that was a real dick move. And I get why O'Brien does it. But it's a potent emotional punch for the episode that is well received. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because Gorn Tosk shows back up.
Gornagar, yeah.
Lizard Man shows up and goes, "Well, this fucking sucks. There goes my plan. I guess we can't do this after all." And again, super bro through and through. And this is where I think there should have been a lot of regret looking back for O'Brien, where he's like, "All right, well, I'm going to take you back to your ship. I'm going to kill my subordinate who has proven that he is rabid. I'm going to let you guys leave. I'm going to do the most un-Jem'Hadar shit through and through every step of the way, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go kill the rest of my people because we're fucked."
It definitely, they have a good moment when he does that, where he kills a subordinate and he's going to let him go. And Bashir is trying to convince him to come. Like, you don't need to die here. What you can survive. You can come with us. Like, don't do that. I wanted more, just kind of like what you're implying from O'Brien, where he realizes he's fucked up, but that like this guy actually was everything that Julian said he was, and they should have helped him.
Mm-hmm.
But they truncate it a little to just where he turns to Bashir, or he turns to O'Brien rather, and says, "You were a soldier?" And he said, "I have been, yes." And he says it very quietly. It's like, I think that's like the moment we're looking for is kind of buried in the way he reacts. So he's really like,
Shameful.
"Oh yeah, I fucked up real bad here, didn't I?" Not that he judges him for it,
Mm-hmm.
and quite the opposite. He seems to be respecting him for the fact that he's doing exactly what he would expect a soldier to do in this circumstance, protect his officer. And says, "Then you explain it to him," and then he just leaves, right? And he does. This is like, he brought him here. He's responsible. He has to close the loop on this. He cannot abandon them. He has to take full responsibility for his actions because he's the one that sold them on the dream that ultimately has now failed. And
Yep.
yeah, I would agree that a little bit more reflection from O'Brien might have been good. But at the same time, like the end of the episode scene, which I want to go back to the B plot briefly, and then we'll do that. I think it works in the sense that they still kind of are at odds. Back in the B plot, Detective Worf stuff kind of like plays out very as you'd expect, right? He's investigating this. Odo tells him to kind of to fuck off.
Let me tell you what. Michael Dorn is so big that when he holds a Type 2 phaser, it looks silly.
It does.
I see why they have him fighting with Mechlars and Batleths as much, because like it's like watching Arnold Schwarzenegger hold a Beretta 92. Like, it's too small. Arnold Schwarzenegger needs a Desert Eagle because Arnold Schwarzenegger is a big dude. When Worf springs out with his sting operation, it's like, oh, you're under arrest. Like, now I understand why they didn't do that kind of plot on Next Gen, because springing forward, holding a Type 2 phaser and being like, the jig is up, looks so goony and bad. But if the alternative was, phase pistols and Reed not knowing which way to hold it and just looking like an absolute... I guess the moral of the story is there's no way to brandish a gun in Star Trek that looks cool, whether because of the actor's ineptitude or the prop is just not designed as an offensive, menacing thing.
I don't know. The Magos did it all right. Like, you can do it. You just... The Type 2 is never going to be the most threatening looking thing. It's not designed to look like a gun.
Mm-hmm. Which is great Federation design language.
Yes. Even our guns don't look like guns because we're not gun people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it does come out when he's like, see? And, as we find out, this is all set up. Quark's in on it. Oda was the bag. This was all supposed to be like, we're going to go get
the bag man.
He loves it, man. He loves being the bag man. And ultimately,
that's his alter ego. He's part of the Justice League. He's not Batman. He's Bagman.
You're going to settle,
known as Bagman.
We're going to settle for less. We're going to get the middleman because you fucked it up, Worf. Way to go. And later on, he goes into Sisko's office. Sisko is like, he's fiddling with that clock he got like forced to make when he was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that the two most prominent things in his office throughout the entire run are from season 1 crazy bullshit episodes of he gets visited by the leprechauns and he has the baseball, and then he gets like mind hijacked and he made a fucking ridiculous ass clock, and they just keep showing up. Like, it's like a reminder of like, yeah, we know. We used to have like TNG Light episodes. We're not ashamed. We had it right here. We're gonna fuck with it every once in a while.
Flute. It's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's fine. I do love the conversation that he and Sisko have. Sisko's not mad. He understands exactly who the fuck Worf is and why this all went down, because he's a Starfleet officer too. He knows how his people work, right? Like, this is a struggle for people to adapt their ways to living in a frontier space station. That doesn't even.
He also specifically asked Worf to be there.
Yes,
this isn't. What's obviously Section 31 security guy's name?
Oh, the Norwood Reaper man?
Yeah.
Commander Eddington?
Eddington. Like, this isn't Eddington where you've been assigned here by an outside party. This is, I specifically want you and I need you and I understand you, and I'm going to really give you the soft touch Ben Sisko treatment here.
And it's a good speech. It's, you're used to being in a black and white place. This is a shades of gray place. It has to be by necessity. Quark is his own version of the shades of gray, and you'll learn. You'll figure it out. And I knew you'd come here and tell me like you fucked it up. I know. It's okay. Nothing really bad happened from any of this. You just learned a lesson.
Toleration we have to have for Quark, because he's not here by choice. I blackmailed him to be here. I threatened to lock his nephew in prison. The one that's off at Starfleet Academy.
Or will be soon, yeah.
So,
yeah,
it's a special place, Worf. You just gotta try to chill out. And never at any point does like Sisko ever say, "Hey, mind your own fucking." Or he could have been like, also, well, I guess he does kind of say like Odo's got his own vibe, but yeah, just you need to realize in your own terms that you are not wearing a gold uniform anymore. And
Yeah, that was the first conversation they had, was like, let Odo do his thing. It's not your job anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the second that conversation is, there's an unwritten rule book that you're just going to have to learn by being here and learning.
Now, to be fair, Worf did approach Odo and say, hey, there's this update about Klingon aggression or whatever. And after the meeting breaks, Worf's like, hey, Odo, here's some files on this case that I'm supposed to not be touching. And Odo was like, oh, hey, thanks for those. He could have been like, I got big plans for Quark, man. Don't worry. We're going to get him. And again, he
like,
chooses...
I've got a whole plan. I appreciate your assistance, but, I got it handled.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me. But I think it fits in Odo's personality to not do that. And it's his flaw, as you pointed out.
Yep. And it's, we all need flaws on Deep Space Nine. That's what makes a show so interesting. Lucky for them, that runabout, it's one of the good ones. This isn't that shitty variant that kills space popes. This is the fucking rough and tumble, ruggedized ATV version. Bosk takes him back. There's like, you guys better go. And they just zoop right back off into the atmosphere, lickety split. And they're flying back. And we see that there's some animosity. Not animosity, but there's an acknowledgement. They're not going to sit there and ignore it. And it's O'Brien saying, you can write me up for what I did. And I really like Julian's like, that's not my style, man. And that's absolutely on point for Bashir. Bashir is not a rule thumper. Bashir is very like Odo in that he has his own moral compass, which, normally it's pretty lawful. He wouldn't give any of those, would he give Brain Shocker from that piece of shit episode Herman's Head? The guy was looking for transnucleic amino acids. Or like, this guy knows up from down. He knows right from wrong. But he's like, no. I'm going to ignore rank as well, basically. And you tried to pull me out of there because you thought that was right. And I think that writing you up for this is wrong. And this is something we're going to have to hash out on our own.
The way that they both approach the conversation is very realistic between two prideful men that respect each other, but neither is necessarily willing to admit that they were wrong. O'Brien feels the necessity to apologize because he did disobey orders. He blew up his work. He forced his will on Bashir. And of course, Julian is choosing not to punish him for that. Like, he could be court-martialed for all of that and be out of Starfleet. And of course, he kind of knows that Julian isn't going to, but he still is acknowledging through his apologies that he owes him a debt as a consequence of doing that to him. And Julian, for his credit, doesn't back off of the fact he's mad about this and says, because like O'Brien tries to phrase this, I'm sorry I had to. And Julian says, no, Chief, you didn't have to. You did not have to disobey orders. You did not have to blow up what I was doing to try and save their lives. You chose to do those things. And O'Brien defends his choices in the sense of, I thought I was doing what was necessary to save your life. And Julian accepts that as enough for an apology to say, oh, what was the subtext of their first conversation? These are brothers. These men love each other in a platonic fashion, and they're not afraid of the fact that they do at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes Julian, a second to decide that that's where he's going to leave it. And, they frame it around the idea they were supposed to play darts, and they're going to kind of take a break from that for some time. And it's Julian who actually kind of reaches back out ultimately to say, like, maybe in a few days after we've had some time to sort of get
sort
over
through our
what's just happened.
feelings.
Yeah. And it's uncommon to see that kind of relationship so well written. It's hard to do that, and it's also hard to act it authentically. And they really like to be two friends in genuine conflict, where one person is not like completely submitting to the other, where that conflict kind of, it's resolved, but there's still a tension that is going to naturally dissipate slowly over time rather than some big cathartic moment. And I really liked how they were able to nail that moment at the end of the episode, and they kind of just leave you with it. The runabout lands and the episode ends.
Because of what Bosk does at the end in front of O'Brien and confirms everything that Julian said, and essentially that Julian was right.
Mm-hmm.
I could have gone for like a legit apology, like, you were right, I'm sorry. Like, at the end of the day, I am still a post-scarcity utopian man of tomorrow who was good enough morally to be on the Enterprise. Like, I see that, I did fuck up, that we could have helped those people. There could have been some way to phrase it, but like, there's no real remorse from O'Brien on that. And like, I'd like to think at some point this is going to get referenced again and maybe handled a little bit. But, it brings up the bigger question, like, would these guys ultimately have killed Bashir?
Right. Which is what O'Brien's point is when they're having their conflicts over this, is they're just going to use you and dispose of you. What you are assuming the right moral outcome. What if they use this freedom to be marauders? What if instead of being controlled by the Dominion, they become uncontrolled maniacs? And I think that that's kind of the where O'Brien continues to keep his like I still did the right thing position.
Mm-hmm.
And when this episode gets referenced in the future, and it does, I think it's more on that basis of the more Iborg level question.
The difficulty that Julian encounters never gets really solved. This guy, Bosk, has shrugged off the chains of Ketracel White. All the conditions seem to be the same. There's nothing environmental that Julian can link to it.
Julian brings up he might have been immune the entire time. He might just be a genetic exception.
Yeah, like maybe they all are immune and they just have to get through detox and whatever. Or maybe this guy is truly unique. He is a once in a generation exception to all of the rules. Not only that he could shrug off Ketracel White, but this guy could grow beyond his programming. Like, they really set this guy up to be a reoccurring character, and I would like to think that somehow he is. But, they explore that more, like, when he shoots his subordinate, like, okay, Bosk is chill. Bosk is a thinking man. Bosk has potential. These other guys, if they kick the drug habit, are they still going to be pieces of shit? And I'd say there's enough blood in the water by the end of this thing that that's a possibility. My other question that I had going through this was, is this thing a setup? Is this another mind game legitimately by the Dominion, which has already played mind games with these guys, VR puzzle, dungeon rooms or whatever? Is this the founders seeing if the Jem'Hadar can be subverted? Are they, do they need to tighten the leash more? Is this guy going to turn out to be a changeling by the end? I don't know.
Unfortunately, he does not reappear. Ron Moore even said the assumption of the writing staff was that he died at the end of the episode off camera. So they never thought to bring him back. His story was what they saw here, and the mystery of the aftermath of it is part of what's supposed to live with them, which I get. That's a narrative choice that I understand. But
it's the right place for these stories is Deep Space Nine.
And I think, to your point, though, like, if you were going to build on it to say, like, is this a deeper plot? Is this the changelings, trying to test everyone involved?
Mm-hmm.
That's compelling, but at the same time, I think it's better that it's not. I think, like, separating these pieces off and letting them live for a moment, like, you learn so much about the Jem'Hadar, about how they see the founders as gods, like, legitimately, like, distant gods
that want them to die for them and not give a shit. Just 100% expendable.
The way they deal with the Vorta, which is a deep resentment because the Vorta controlled the Ketracel White, evidently.
Slave owners, yeah.
Like, and the way that the whole Jem'Hadar society, such as it exists, like that, these Jem'Hadar are expecting to die because their knee gets blown out, right? And I can't fight anymore, so you got to kill me. And there's like no hesitation between anybody that's the rules.
There's also a nice reminder in this that, like, these guys are robbed of a childhood. They are fully grown in 3 days, and they are put on the front lines. Like, it truly is monstrous what one species has done to another species here. And it really makes you go back and look at the way that Avery Brooks phrased the episode he directed. Like, I'm aware of what a slave story is and how to present this.
Right. Yeah. Because he did direct that episode with the kid. I forgot. You're right. So we move on from this to, frankly, one of my personal favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, and something that, and if you want to talk about Dukat becoming the main character of the show, is the beginning of that. What is it that we're going to watch next week?
Season 4, Episode 5, Indiscretion. There's Ducat and Kira, and they look like they're over there by Goran Rock. Kira and Ducat search for the 6-year-old crash site of a Cardassian freighter that was carrying Bajoran prisoners. Also, Sisko deals with Cassidy moving on to the station and a new development in their relationship. Date night for everybody.
Yes. You got to have Ducat and Kira finally go on a zany adventure together. The mileage the show gets out of what happens from this is kind of crazy. It's my favorite storyline by a lot. It's the main thrust of everything that happens with Ducat from this point forward, quite frankly. And it's so well tied together because when I think about this starts shit that does not fully pay off until season 7 and is constantly the consequences of this are reverberate as a consequence. Really just cool stuff that happens here. And it's a LeVar Burton directed episode.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that.
He does not suffer in the Voyager jail here. He's getting the good shit here on Deep Space Nine.
Used yet. Teleplay by this Nicholas Cora guy again. Interesting. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it, Joe.
And we're looking forward to having you along for the ride. Thank you so much for listening to V'ger Please. If you wish to join us on Discord, please reach out to me at V'ger Please on Twitter, or actually more reliably, V'gerPlease@gmail.com. Happy to get you an invite into that. We're also on Facebook. And if you can, share, subscribe on whatever platform that you listen or watch us on, and leave comments. Comments are always quite welcome. We'd particularly enjoy if someone could review us on Apple Podcasts. We've never had a review on Apple Podcasts. We had iTunes reviews, but never on Apple Podcasts. So if someone listens to us there, give us a review. That would be awesome. Thanks so much. See you next week.